Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This week I'm doing something a little bit different, delving into some historical costuming and historical clothing making, and I'm going to be making this shift and I'm really excited, so let's get started. For this project I'm going to be using the Simplicity pattern 8579. For this pattern, you know, it comes with instructions. For anyone who's new to reading patterns, depending on what you're doing, like say I was going to be doing the corset, I would cut out all the corset A pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Since I am only doing B, this is the front view, back view. I will be cutting out 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The peignets will be for a later date when I get some broadcloth or some stiffer fabric. So I'll go through talking about, you know, whether the instructions are good, whether or not this is a good first time pattern or beginner pattern. Just because I know quite a bit about reading patterns, I'll give you my 2 cents on what's up. Comes the part in the sewing where people tend to get stuck. It's in cutting your fabric. I have to iron this fabric, as you can see, super wrinkly, not gonna be fun, definitely need to iron. But I want to draw your attention to, if you've never read any patterns, you're a beginner, that they actually tell you exactly how to lay out your pattern pieces. Sometimes I follow these, sometimes I don't. I actually have 60-inch muslin, so I can follow this pattern, and it's telling me to put a fold on this side and a fold on this side instead of what is normally done, which is just a fold on one side. So I'm gonna iron my fabric, fold it in this correct manner, and then I am gonna just get to cutting. I'll show you the cutting process. I'll show you how I lay it out. The ironing process is really boring. Probably not going to show you that. So this is the current layout of the pattern pieces. This slot right here is where 7 and 9 will go. But I want to cut out the first 7 and then put that right there. 6 and 5 are going down the table, but I'll cut them as soon as I cut out all of these other pieces. All right, so I've done the first pass. So I've done this 1/4 inch straight seam, and then I'm going to clip really close as it says, flip it over and sew down one more time to get my French seam. So I'll probably show a montage of sewing again. That I have done this second set of straight stitches, if we look at the side that will eventually become the outside, this is what it looks like. So when you do that French seam, you're actually encasing the edges so that you don't have to seal them and you don't have to feel them on the inside of your garment. And I think these turned out pretty good. Once you're done with doing your French seam, you are supposed to iron it to one side just to make sure that it stays nice and beautiful. Also, a quick note, this is the same process that I'm using for both 5 with the side gores as well as 6 and number 7. So you're going to be doing the same process 2 times. All right, now that we have done our French seams on 5 and 7 attached, as well as 6 and 7, we're going to do step 3, which is adding or attaching the top portions of 5 and 6 together, as well as the side seams. You can see from our notes, we're going to be doing 3, which is right there. Sewing from this point down. The big thing that I will say is I'm going to be following the French seams, so I'm going to be doing basically double the work. I'm going to be sewing the front exterior, flipping them, sewing them again so that I get that nice French seam. Right now it just looks like a pile of muslin, but pretty soon we'll start to have the center part, and then I will start working on the arms. In order to make step 3 a little bit easier on me, I'm gonna do the top shoulder portions first and then do the sides, just so that it's easier for me to sew and flip and I don't have to fight with the fabric so much. So I'm going to pin both of these shoulder pieces up here, sew them with the nice, or what is going to be the exterior on the outside for the first pass, flip it inside out, sew again so that I get that nice French seam on the outside, and I think it's gonna look really cool, so I'm excited. Our shoulder seams are complete with the French seam in it. Now what I have done is gone and done the second part of number 3, which is I am going to stitch these side seams. Now you'll notice that my pins don't go all the way up. That's in order to leave this space for the actual sleeves. So I have put my top pin exactly where that point is on the pattern, and I'm going to sew nice sides out for this French seam, flip it in, sew again, and then my sides will be both French seamed as well, and I'll have my center portion of the shift done, and then it'll be to working on the sleeves. To the next part of the shift. So we have completed the first 3 steps, which is awesome. So now we're going to go on to 4, which is attaching the underarm gusset to the sleeve. I'm going to do it still doing the French seam. So instead of putting right sides together, I'm going to do the opposite of that. Then I'm going to sew the 1/8 inch seam, flip it over, sew again, so that it gives it the French seams on all of it. So hopefully this works. We will see. You will see, because I will show you exactly if it doesn't work. All right, so now that we have sewed our first piece in, this one just needs to get folded over and sewn one more time. But I was trying to figure out how to do the next end, which is step 5, to stitch this in place while still getting that French seam. So this is the other sleeve, so not the one in the picture, it's mirror image. And so how I'm gonna do this French seam is, so if I were to do this normally, what would have happened if there wasn't a French seam was this seam would have come over to this end and be sewn right here, just like the picture. But you're not gonna do that if you wanna do the French seams. You've got a couple more steps to do. So what I am gonna do is, instead of folding it straight across like this, is I'm going to flip it and sew it first this way. All right, so now we have our 2 sleeves with our gusset in the sleeve. So now it's on to step 5, which is to pin this underneath, press those seams up, and then which we don't need to do because our seams are French seams, so we would just press them the way we wanted to for comfort, and then do a narrow seam on the sleeve edge, which I'll probably do a double rollover, and I'll show you or a double hem, just to encase the inside of the fabric so that it does not fray without having to serge it. So let's get to getting. So what I'm gonna do, in order to ensure that these French seams are French seams, is I'm going to flip these inside out. Well, technically right side out. And I'm gonna sew the first seam down this edge, ba-boom. I'm gonna stitch that in. Then I'm going to flip it the other way, sew it in again to give it that French seam. And so it'll match up and all these pieces will look really nice right here. At least that is the goal. And then do the same thing to this sleeve. So what I am probably gonna do is, since all these are meeting right here, I wonder what the best way to do this would be. Because first I would sew it flat, but I can't necessarily do that right here. Should have thought about this before I started. So in order to make this seam happy, what do I have to do? I think I would have to figure out a way to lay it nice and flat so that it all met up, and then stitch down this edge, flip it, and fix it. So that's what I'm gonna do. So, gonna pin this edge. Now I'm just taking what I've kind of interpreted from the instructions and what I know about, you know, trying to encase that seam. We'll see if this is the right answer. I hope it's the right answer. But if you want all your seams to be French seams, you have to figure out a way to, you know, make it work. So it worked. So this is what the outside looks like. Obviously this has not been pressed yet, but look at the inside. Yeah. Okay, next sleeve. All right, so in order to do the sleeve, this is what I did with the French seam. Flipped it inside out. Pin this end. Follow this curve along down to the end. Sew a scant 8-inch seam allowance. Chop off that end, flip it inside out, sew it again with another 1/8-inch seam allowance. And that's how you do it. All right, so we did that first sewing seam. This is what it looks like. I'm gonna clip my threads, and then gonna flip it inside, well, gonna flip it, yeah, inside out, because that first one was right side out. And I'm gonna sew along this edge. So your best bet is to tuck the gusset within the seam and lay this guy flat. So the gusset in here, lay flat, and continue the seam down the length of your arm. I left a space so that it would be easier to hem down there at the end. You have to make a decision at this point in your sewing with this hem, with the sleeve of this hem, which side your French seam is going to go on the inside. I am going to fold mine up so that when the hem is wrapped around, that it'll keep going like that. It's a choice. We'll see if I hate it. But I do have to make a choice of which way it needs to go in order for it to lay flat. All right, so the next step, what I've done is I've pinned my narrow hem along both of my sleeve ends. So I'm gonna sew that, but I wanna first talk about these sleeves and how I'm gonna French seam them. If I had been maybe a little bit smarter, I would have French seamed this whole, the whole side together as one. It probably would have made this area a little bit better. So what I have done is the sleeve is inside out and the dress is right side out. So what I am gonna do, so wrong sides are touching, right sides are on the outside. I'm gonna sew along, flip it inside, cut around that narrow seam, then do that again. I am a little bit worried about how this edge seam is gonna come out, but I'm gonna try it and see if it works. If I had put a little forethought into it, I would have probably not closed up this seam completely. I would have left it open so that it was easier to do this point of the sleeve. If you have a better way to do this, please let me know. The only other way that I thought might work is if I just serged the edge of the sleeve and just sewed it right in, just to make sure, or sewed it right in and then serged it, just to make sure that none of the muslin would come undone. But honestly, I did not think about it before I have done it. So I have the hems to sew real quick, and this sleeve, which is put together right now, as well as I did pin the hem of the base. I try to pin a bunch of things so that I can pin a bunch of things, sew them, then remove all the pins, pin something else, go to town. I am doing a rolled hem on both the ends of the sleeves as well as the hem of the shift. That's just what I like to do. That is not the hand sewing that you see or the stitching that is happening on the instructions. I just like that look better. That is what I'm gonna go with. There's some serious joy when you get to the end of your hem and you just made it. And you have no more bobbin thread, but you made it. All right, so the first part of the French seam has been done. I did flip it inside out, and now I'm gonna go through and actually create this seam so that it's nice on that side. I'm going to do that for both, show you the sewing process for both, and then we'll be one step closer to the end. All right, I'll look at it at this stage. So it's on my mannequin right now. Of course, it'll get cinched up by the corset, and I need to do the neckline. That's the last part. But the sleeves look really good. It's obviously not ironed, but once it's ironed, you'll be able to like see the pleat and the sides. So I think it turned out pretty good. I'm gonna finish this and iron. All right, so the final step of this shift is to do the neckline. So I am going to follow the instructions. I did pin it all so that it would be easier. Let me show you the pins. I did pin it all so that it would be easier to slip stitch that hem, mostly so I just don't have to think about it. So let's get to slip stitching. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And if you really liked this video of me delving and showing you some of the historical costuming that I'm doing because it's fun, let me know in the comments. I am trying to show you all kind of the many facets of what I'm making at any given time. So please, like and subscribe. Tell me you like it. Tell me what you maybe want me to make next. I'm thinking maybe like a superhero historical costume, but we'll figure that out. And I hope you all have a great day and happy making.